All right, so let's get right into it. Today, we're going to talk about a composer who was, for all intents and purposes, the pop star of his era. His name? Antonio Vivaldi. So, let me ask you something. Does this sound familiar? I'm willing to bet it does. Seriously, you've heard this everywhere, right? In movies, TV shows, maybe even in an ad for a fancy car or something. Yeah, that melody is from a piece called Spring, which is part of a bigger work, The Four Seasons. And it's not just famous, it's one of the most recognizable pieces of classical music, like in the whole world, a true global hit, hundreds of years before Spotify. But here's the crazy part. What if I told you that the guy who wrote this global hit, was completely forgotten for 200 years? Like totally erased from history. How is that even possible? Well, to understand that, we have to rewind the clock. So let's talk about his unique beginnings. We're heading back in time, way back, to Venice, Italy in the year 1674. That's where Antonio Vivaldi was born, and music was literally in his DNA. His dad was a professional violinist, so you could say he was almost born with a violin in his hand. So Vivaldi himself was a really interesting character. Get this, he trained to be a priest. And because he had this super vibrant red hair, everyone called him the Red Priest. Pretty cool nickname, right? But he had this lifelong health problem, probably asthma, which they called tightness of the chest. It meant he couldn't really stand up and say a full mass. So what did he do? He poured all of that energy, everything he had, into his other great love, music. And the kind of music he was writing, it was from a period called the Baroque era. Now, what does that mean? Think of Baroque music as the blockbuster movie score of its time. It's all about high energy, really strong driving rhythms, and these huge dramatic contrasts. You'll get these super loud, epic parts, and then suddenly, it gets really quiet and intense. It was designed to be exciting. Next up, Vivaldi's orchestra of orphan girls, which was basically his music laboratory. So where did the Red Priest actually work? Well, his main gig was at a pretty unusual place. It was called the Ospedale della Pieta, which was a home for orphaned girls. And he started working there as a music teacher way back in 1703. But listen, he didn't just teach them scales. No way. He turned this group of orphaned girls into one of the most famous, most sought-after orchestras in all of Europe. I mean, people would travel for weeks from all over the continent just to get a ticket to hear them play. Imagine that. So this school, it pretty much became his personal music laboratory, and he was just unstoppable. The guy wrote over 500 concertos, 500, and a ton of those were written specifically for his best students, tailor-made to show off their incredible talent. Can you even imagine your music teacher writing a masterpiece just for you to perform? Now for his global hit, The Four Seasons, music that tells a story. All of this work, all this experimenting in his music lab, it all led up to his absolute masterpiece. Yeah, we're talking about The Four Seasons. You know the tune, but it's so much more than that. It was a total game changer. It's actually a set of 4 different violin concertos, and each one paints a picture of a different season. And this brings us to a really important idea called program music. See, before Vivaldi, music was generally just abstract sounds. Beautiful, sure, but it wasn't usually about something specific. Vivaldi was one of the first to really use music to tell a story or describe a scene. It's like a soundtrack for your imagination. He was making movie music before movies were even invented. And he did it so cleverly. Like, next time you listen, pay close attention. In spring, the violins are literally imitating birds chirping and streams flowing. Then in summer, the music gets all heavy and slow, like a hot, sticky day, before it just erupts into this massive thunderstorm. Autumn sounds like a huge harvest festival. You can almost hear the dancing. And my favorite is winter. The violins make these sharp, plucky sounds that sound exactly like chattering teeth or ice cracking under your feet. It's just pure genius. So, at the height of his career, Vivaldi was an absolute megastar. We're talking A-list celebrity. His sheet music was a bestseller all over Europe. He was getting gigs playing for popes and emperors. He was on top of the world. But, as we all know, fame can be a tricky thing. And then the trend started to shift. You know how it is. Musical tastes changed. People started to get tired of that big, complex, dramatic Baroque sound. They wanted something new, something a little simpler, more elegant. And just like that, Vivaldi's style, The very thing that made him famous started to sound, well, a little dated. He fell out of fashion. This timeline really lays it all out, doesn't it? You see the big moments, he's born, he becomes the Red Priest, and then boom, 1725. He publishes The Four Seasons, and he's at the absolute peak. But then, look at that drop. By 1740, he has to move to Vienna, basically looking for any work he can get. And it didn't happen for him. I mean, just look at the contrast here. It's absolutely staggering. At his peak, he's the talk of Europe, playing for the most powerful people in the world. At his end, forgotten. He went from being wealthy and celebrated to dying broke in a city where he had no friends left. A musical superstar buried in a common pauper's grave. It's just unbelievable. The world's biggest pop star was gone, and nobody even noticed.
But hold on, because that is not where this story ends, not even close. What comes next is maybe the greatest comeback story in the history of music, even if Vivaldi wasn't around to enjoy it.
200 years. Just think about that number for a second. For 2 entire centuries, Vivaldi was basically a nobody, just a footnote in some dusty old music textbook. All that incredible music that had once echoed through palaces, it was just silent, lost, gathering dust on some forgotten shelf. And then, in the 1920s, something amazing happened. A researcher in Italy basically stumbles upon a huge trunk of old papers in a school. And what's inside? A massive collection of Vivaldi's original handwritten music. It was the ultimate buried treasure. Hundreds and hundreds of pieces, concertos, operas that nobody in the modern world even knew existed. So, this incredible discovery brought Vivaldi roaring back to life, and it reminded everyone why he's so important. I mean, the guy basically perfected the solo concerto. That whole idea of one instrument being the star, he proved that music could paint pictures and tell incredible stories. He was so good, he even influenced other legends like Johann Sebastian Bach. And now, ironically, his music is absolutely everywhere. It's more famous today than it ever was when he was alive. So it all leaves you with this one kind of mind-blowing question. Vivaldi was a superstar who completely disappeared, only to come back stronger than ever. And it really makes you think, right? Which artists from our time, which of today's biggest pop stars or viral TikTok songs might be totally forgotten 200 years from now, just sitting on some old server waiting for someone in the future to click play and rediscover a classic?